Hi everyone, welcome to Vermont. How many, this is their first time in Vermont? Quite a few. How many had smooth travels yesterday? Okay, fewer. I've heard a lot of difficult travel stories, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm looking forward to this weekend. I wanted to first introduce a few of my colleagues that are here today. You probably met some of them last night, or perhaps you've already had class with some of them. But in the back, we have Dean Cynthia Lewis, we have Professor Gabrielle Stafford, Professor Stephanie Clark, Professor Dana Smith, and of course, you know Professor Richard Sala already. All of my colleagues, we love all of our students the same, the online students and the residential students, but there is something special about this program, and it is, I think, in part because of the shared dedication that you have enrolling in this program. I was hearing so many stories last night of many of you who worked full-time all day, had children and families to manage at night, were in class every night, and you're beginning a really long journey, and there's something really inspiring to all of us about that dedication and sacrifice that you make. We think it really enriches the classroom as well, and so we're so grateful to have you as both students and as alumni eventually. So welcome, we're so glad you're here. We think that this weekend is another thing that makes this program special because we get this chance to socialize and have class together in a really concentrated time that we just don't get with our residential students. So we're really looking forward to this. And with that, I really have the honor to introduce Justice Nancy Waples to you today, who will administer your professional oath. Justice Waples has been a trailblazer her whole life. In April of 2022, she was appointed to the Vermont Supreme Court. She was the 5th woman appointed to the Vermont Supreme Court and the 1st person of color. In addition, she had previously served as a Vermont Superior Court and the 1st person of color there as well. Prior to her judicial experience, she has a long career in public service and private practice, and she served as an assistant U.S. attorney as well as a district attorney in Manhattan. She immigrated to the United States and learned English as a second language, and we are so honored to have her as a friend of Vermont Law and Graduate School, and so honored that she will be the one to administer the professional oath to you today. So with that, Justice Waples.
Thank you, Dean McCormick. It is an honor to be welcomed here by Professor Sala, again, Dean McCormick, the other dean who was in the back of the room as well, faculty, administrators, staff, and of course, the students. And if you have family and friends here, I also welcome them. Decades ago, I vividly remember being in the same place as all of you, launching my legal career. I was filled with pride, excitement, and terror. I am a first-generation American and the first person in my family to graduate from college and to go to law school. I had no idea what to expect. However, I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. My first interaction with our justice system was when my family faced eviction from our home in public housing, and my mother felt helpless. As the daughter of immigrants who spoke English as a second language, or barely at all, I know firsthand what it was like to stand up for your rights and demand protection. As a justice, I continue to keep in mind the faces behind the cases and remain focused on the goal of providing all Vermonters with equal, fair, and accessible justice. Like all of you, I was fortunate to attend a law school with a strong tradition of encouraging their graduates to pursue a career of public service. There is no more satisfying way to build a life than in service to your community. At the beginning of my career, I had the privilege of working as a prosecutor for the late Robert Morgenthau, the Manhattan District Attorney. In his office, it was never the verdict at the end of the case that mattered, but whether we had carefully and fairly presented the evidence to the jury for its determination. Although vigorous prosecution was important, so was fairness. Mr. Morgenthau's core values, his reverence for justice, has guided me in my professional life. They guided me when I served as an assistant United States attorney here and most certainly when I was appointed as the Criminal Justice Act Coordinator for the District of Vermont by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. I was immensely proud to assume the leadership of the group of private criminal defense attorneys who represented indigent defendants charged with crimes in federal court. An environment of valuing every voice has always been at the core of my practice, and it was how I built teams and community throughout my career. It is around this very notion of justice that I strive to structure my life on and off the bench. There are so many avenues to take during a life in the law, especially if you choose public service. I would encourage anyone who is thinking about pursuing government to go for it, because we need not just smart and committed people in government, but people who see the inner light in everyone and who can bring that passion to work for the public interest. Today, I have been called upon to administer the oath of professionalism to all of you. At its core, the oath expects its students, who are citizens of an academic and social community, to show respect for the person, property, and rights of others. This is especially critical because it calls attention to the need for strict adherence to courtesy, civility, honesty, and responsibility when interacting with other students, faculty, staff, or individuals within the community. The overarching feeling I have when reading this oath is collegiality. Our judiciary here in Vermont is blessed to have a Chief Justice, Paul Reiber, at its helm. He, like all my colleagues on the Supreme Court, live and breathe the spirit of this oath. The Chief's style of leadership is to maintain decency, respect, and trust. It's how we approach all our cases, and it's what makes being a member of the Supreme Court such a joy. We are 5 justices, 5 people, some of whom were basically strangers to each other, and we've come together as a bench. We have trust and collegiality, and we try out new ideas on each other. We evolve together. I learn from my colleagues, and I hope they learn from me. For me, collegiality with my bench colleagues has been so critical to my service. We discuss, debate, and sometimes disagree, but we always focus on the rule of law and what is right and just. We understand our role as guiding the law, clarifying it for the lower courts, the attorneys, and the public. After oral argument in a case, we may start off with a broad draft opinion, but as we weigh in, we sometimes realize that we don't have to speak so broadly. Our main mission is to provide guidance and clarification on Vermont law. I think that is why we are often able to agree. The oath of professionalism for the students here today could not come at a more pivotal time in our profession. The rule of law and faith in the rule of law, the state of judicial independence, the meaning and the importance of truth, indeed, the nature of democracy itself, all are in question and under fire in countless ways. Phrases and concepts like the rule of law and due process seem here and now to serve more as political slogans than foundational principles. There is a preference to vilify one's opponents rather than engage them in meaningful discussion. Rigor should be demanded when discussing the foundations of our legal system. Indeed, the concept of justice seems turned on its head, holding different meanings depending on whether you are a political adversary or ally. Certain norms do matter. Our adversaries are not our enemies. The law is not a political weapon. Objective truths do exist. And most importantly, fair process is essential in a civilized society. It turns out that the law has much to teach us about truth, dignity, and justice. and about how to resolve disagreements and disputes with reason and evidence rather than insults and diatribes. It is a troubling time, and in troubled times it is important to take a deep breath and a step back, to try to understand how justice is supposed to be accomplished. Then study the contrast between the bombast and anger versus the calm thought process. Your education at Vermont Law and Graduate School is in that contrast. Here, you will acquire the ineffable character of mind to think like a lawyer. That's real, and it is measurable. I think of a person as a sum of his or her parts. If you are nothing but thoughts, then the consequences of being made into better thoughts is that you are made into a better person, more able to leave an impression on the world. I can't think of any countervailing cost to a benefit like that. By the time you graduate, you will be able to navigate a tangle of logic that will befuddle a normal person, that is, a non-lawyer. We are a nation of laws. We have found that justice, or I have found, that justice springs from the head and the heart. Law can unduly elevate the abstract over the actual. Smart laws do not assure justice any more than a good music score guarantees a melodious tune. The law is merely an instrument, and without an instrument of human hands, it is as lifeless and uninspiring as a glorious cello kept in its case. The law cannot compel us to respect each other. It cannot conquer evil, teach grace, or extinguish apathy. Every day, the law's best aims are carried out for good or evil by human beings. Mercy is granted or denied by human beings. Over 90 years ago, Henry Sweet found himself on trial for his life and his freedom. He was a 19-year-old African-American man staying with his uncle in Detroit. His uncle bought a house in an otherwise white neighborhood. One night, a large mob gathered outside the house, and after shouting racial slurs and throwing stones, several men forcibly entered. In the struggle, Henry shot and killed one of the intruders. He was charged with murder. In People versus Henry Sweet, Clarence Darrow delivered one of the most beautiful summations I have ever read, and I will leave you with some of his words. Every human being's life in this world is inevitably mixed with every other life, and no matter what laws we pass, no matter what precautions we take, unless the people we meet are kindly and decent and human and liberty-loving, then there is no liberty. Freedom comes from human beings rather than from laws and institutions. Henry Sweet was acquitted by an all-white jury of men. Welcome to the incoming class, and may Vermont Law and Graduate School's oath of professionalism guide your heart and head today and always. So I will ask all of you to rise. And please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I pledge that I will uphold the highest standards of academic excellence, honesty, professionalism, and integrity. In my academic and my professional life, I will treat others with dignity, respect, and courtesy. I commit myself to zealous advocacy for justice and to ethical service without prejudice. Congratulations. So I must say, one of my greatest privileges as a judicial officer and even as an attorney was to be asked to participate in any event at Vermont Law and Graduate School. This today, however, is extraordinarily meaningful to me, and I will echo the eloquence of Dean McCormack. The fact that all of you, or the majority of you, are balancing work and families and doing this at night or sometimes during the day, but I understand most of your classes will be in the evenings, I think bodes so well for the legal profession that we have people like you so committed to want to be lawyers. So I'm really proud to have the chance to administer the oath to all of you. And I gave you practice because you will also be taking an oath when you pass the bar and are admitted as an attorney. So congratulations to all of you. So can I tell them to sit down? They can sit down, right?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and put us on a break. We were going to start at 9:30, but I'm going to put us till 9:35. Take 10 minutes, get what you need, get food if it's out there, water, and then be back 9:35, and we'll start untangling that web.